Mr. Donalds is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Chopra, welcome back. Question. So the CFPB refers to buy now, pay later products as the pay in four, number 4, product in which consumers split a retail purchase, typically $50 to $1,000, into 4 equal interest-free installments, with the first installment, the down payment, due at checkout, and the remaining installments due in 2-week intervals. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, generally that's how the market is today.
Okay, so you would agree that buy now, pay later products have a separate and distinct characteristics from traditional credit cards?
Yeah, they actually are in many ways substitutes for it, but they have a different way people borrow and repay.
All right, so then why is CFPB starting to interpret credit card regulations to include buy now, pay later plans?
It's actually how Congress wrote it. So Congress, when they amended the Truth in Lending Act, they talked about the different devices and accounts that could be used to draw and create loans. So what we did was we got actually a lot of questions. What are the existing provisions that apply? So a lot of the things that apply to credit cards do not apply to them right now. But there was some pieces of it as it relates to billing statements, disputes, and errors that did apply, and we wanted to make sure that there was some consistency around that.
Wouldn't you agree that the primary thing that makes a credit card is interest, and that buy now, pay later agreements are interest-free?
Yeah, so the way the Card Act and the Truth in Lending Act, there's a separate part about finance charges. So finance charges is what often triggers how you have to show an annual percentage rate and other pieces. So it is true that not all aspects of the credit card framework do apply, but some do.
I would argue that without interest, none of the aspects of the credit card framework would apply.
Well, I think they don't have to disclose, for example, an interest rate. That's one part of it, but as it relates to bills and disputes, that's really common for lots of types of loans.
All right, a couple other things. For over 50 years, Congress, under both Democrats and Republicans, have determined that the best way to promote competition and consumer choice while also ensuring robust consumer protection is through disclosure-based laws and regulation. The CFPB has been initiating a series of blogs, circulars, advisory opinions, and rulemakings that appear designed to upend that disclosure-based approach to consumer protection, often by labeling lawful and fully disclosed bank fees as unfair or abusive. If consumers cannot be trusted to make their own decisions after receiving disclosures, do you favor government mandates about product features and fees?
Well, respectfully, disclosures are not the only things that are required. There are some things that have to be disclosed, but there are other prohibitions. So like I mentioned in my opening testimony, in some cases there are restrictions when it comes to data, permissible purposes, and you can't disclose that away. So we have tried our best to say, here is how existing law applies. Disclosures have their role, but I would argue in privacy notices, disclosures aren't enough. And you've passed a number of laws over the past 50 years that touch disclosure and non-disclosure.
Yeah, but we're not talking about privacy aspects. We're talking about fees and fee structure.
But
and CFPB has, hold on, Director Chopra. CFPB has been labeling different fees and fee structures as misleading, abusive, etc. In that vein, is the CFPB outside of the framework that has existed on Capitol Hill for 50 years around disclosure being the way that consumers are provided information?
So not at all. For example, Congress banned certain types of fees altogether.
Whoa, but real quick, to that, before you go, that's Congress banning the situation, not an agency making a promotional view of a situation that is lawful, correct?
So it is consistent what we have done with congressional prohibition. So what we have done on credit cards is exactly in line with the congressional prohibition on excessive or disproportionate fees.
Yeah, but you cannot take a congressional prohibition on something else and
but it's consistent.
Hold on, Director Chopra, and then label it as abusive on something that is allowed under federal law. Now you're picking and choosing.
No, I'm not. Everything we've done has been exactly and squarely with what the prohibitions that currently exist. Now, if there's a loophole that's in the regulations we inherited, and when we do a look back to determine whether it made sense. That is part of the process.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Director Chopra, for coming in. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Horsfield, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you to the chairman, to the ranking member for holding this necessary hearing. We continue to see alarming increases in the frequency, sophistication, and reach of scams. Meanwhile,